After that, we, myself and Kenneth Matiba and Charles Obia made a statement in which we said we would go to Kamkunji to ask Kenyans if they were ready for multi-party. And we do it on the day of the 7th of July, that year, 1990. 7th of July, 1990. So after making that statement, we then now went on to mobilize for the meeting at Kamkunji. But then, of course, the police officers came to block us from meeting each other. They were stationed in my office at Ajib House, Matiba's office, up there on Koinange Street, and Rubia's office, and Paul Mitchell's, and Gibson Kamal Korea's. The 2nd of July 1990, Matiba and Rubia were arrested and taken to detention. On the 4th of July, I was arrested and taken to detention. That same night, they arrested Gitomi Manyara, they arrested John Hamino, they arrested now Justice Mohammed Ibrahim. Paul Mute went into hiding. Kamal Korea ran into American Embassy and sought refuge. Kereto Murungi was in Ethiopia and went to America. That's how it was. But the International Commission of Jurists came up and made a very powerful lobby for release Haminwa and Manyara, and they were released. As we remained in detention, and as you know, Rubia is the one who was first affected. He got a very serious infection. He was taken to hospital. Eventually, he lost his vocal cords and was released. Matiba suffered a stroke in detention and was removed and eventually brought to Nairobi Hospital, after which she was then taken to London for treatment. That completely undermined his health permanently. And these two people eventually died because of not old age at that time, but because of the injuries they sustained while in detention. Many people, but in spite of our being detained, the Kenyan people braved it and came out in numbers to go to Kamkunji on the 7th of July 1990. Many people were killed attempting to reach Kamkunji grounds that time. So then, after we came out of detention, then Ford was formed. We formed Ford. After forming Ford, again we get pressed and said we were going back to Kamkunji. Eventually, when I was taken again, I was moved away from here and taken into exile. But our people braved it and managed to march all the way into Kamkunji. And you see the photograph in front page of Nation there today. You can see Martin Chikuku, James Orengo, Nyango, Masindi Muliro on the back of that truck getting up to Kamkunji. That was not on Saba Saba, that was on the 16th of November 1991. But it's still the Kamkunji. That's why Kamkunji is very historical, the second liberation of this country. and that's why we celebrate Saba Saba. The fateful day on which Kenya's struggle for multi-party democracy took the most decisive turn is iconic and historical. It's a day rivaled only by the present day Mashujaa Day, previously Kenyatta Day, that celebrates the arrest and detention of the freedom fighters jointly called the Kapenguria Six. It is regrettable that the recognition and remembrance of Saba Saba has not been consistent in a short period history of 35 years. One moment it is important, the next moment it is not. On this 35th anniversary of Saba Saba, we decided to remember and to set the record straight on its significance, what it was and is, and what we ought to do with the foundation it laid for the country. Before that day, some patriotic Kenyans had demanded the repeal of Section 2A of the Constitution. A number of people, including Kenneth Matiba, Raila Odinga, Mohamed Ibrahim, Toby Manyara, John Hamino, and Charles Rubia, among others, were arrested and detained. It is quite unfortunate that some of the people we were fighting then and who sanctioned those arrests are trying to hide behind Saba Saba to advance their political fortunes. Some of them are alive today and now are masquerading as liberators. On the fateful day, July 7th, 1990, thousands of Kenyans tried to gather the historic Kamukunji grounds to take stock of the past, the state of the nation, and chart a path of freedom forward. We decided that Saba Saba will be a march for political freedom and liberty, freedom of association, freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and a new democratic constitution founded on multipartyism. Kenyans wanted a fulfillment of the Kenyan dream, which was eradication of poverty, ignorance, disease, and good governance. That clarity of mission is what made Saba Saba different from all other confrontations with the Moi Kanu one-party state. Saba Saba, therefore, was and still is about the sacred and historic grounds of Kamukunji. It was not and is not just another routine street protest in Nairobi or any other town. At Kamukunji is where they held the last cow Kenya-Africa Union meeting in 1952. It is where Kanu's first rally was also held. It was also where the first Ford meeting was held after registration. Saba Saba had a singular purpose: to the repeal of Section 2A of the Constitution and allow multi-party democracy in Kenya. Saba Saba had clear and known national conveners: Kenneth Matiba, Charles Rubia, and yours truly, Raila Odinga. It was what gave birth to a bigger and powerful forum for the restoration of democracy, FORD. FORD had a known nationally inclusive leadership: Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Philip Gachoka, Ahmed Bamariz, Salim Damwe, Asinde Muliro, George Ndenge, Kenneth Matida, Charles Rubia, among others. Saba Saba was inclusive, democratic, and intergenerational. The old, the young, people in and out of the government, professionals, academics, trade unionists, civil society, women groups, and religious groups. All of them found their voice in what it stood for: a people's struggle for good governance, freedom and equal opportunity for all. It was not one group against the entire nation. It was not community against that community, or of this age against that age. The movement stood for a peaceful and constitutional change of guard. That is the reason it focused singularly on amendment and later on the overhaul of the Constitution. These features are what made Saba Saba succeed. A year after the march, on December 2nd, 1991, President Moi capitulated. Section 2A of the Constitution was removed. Multipartyism was reinstated. We achieved our core aim, which was to return Kenya to multipartyism. Today, we have more parties than one could imagine then. That single amendment paved the way for the complete overhaul of the Constitution and the birth in 2010 of a new Constitution that came with provisions for fundamental freedoms and liberties that our citizens enjoy today. It is clear that many of the ideals espoused by the dreamers behind Saba Saba have become part of the national aspiration. We are a better nation because Saba Saba happened. We have a duty and a responsibility to honor the men and women who dared to dream and to turn out at a time of great peril to themselves and their families. 35 years later, the country is grappling with a new wave of unrest and political activism. The question we have to ask ourselves is, where do we go from here? Do we embrace chaos or a coming together of minds and country? As a leading architect of the events leading to the Saba Saba, I choose a coming together of minds and country in the interest of the country. I long fought for its progress, stability, and prosperity. The most important struggle taking shape in our country today is the struggle for good governance, economic opportunity, and equality. The biggest challenge facing Kenya today and into the foreseeable future is how to expand economic opportunity and lift particularly young Kenyans out of poverty, exclusion, and unemployment. Kenyans are yearning for programs and leaders that prioritize economic inclusivity, social justice, and political freedom. There is no doubt that the country is yearning for legislation that makes our institutions more responsive, programs that ensure adequate funding for services that touch wananchi, changes that make our judiciary free, efficient and progressive, measures that make the executive more accountable and efficient. We must end impunity and corruption within our three arms of government. Our leaders must become modest, ethical, humble, and accountable. What is to be done? What is to be done? I propose an inclusive, intergenerational, national conclave to hear our people across all divides and come up with irreducible reforms and changes necessary to take the country forward. I propose that the country urgently returns to the agenda of comprehensive police reforms, focusing on enhancing accountability, transparency, and improving the police-to-people relationship. Your rogue police force that shoots people with impunity. And this is a post that we inherited from the colonialists. It has not been reformed to become a people's defender, a people's servant. I propose that the conclave comes up with better and sustainable ways for addressing transparency, accountability, and impunity, especially with regard to corruption, and ensuring that leaders are held accountable for their actions. I propose that the forum comes up with a comprehensive and sustainable strategy for addressing youth unemployment and expansion of opportunities for youth in the formal and informal sectors.